Hi, and welcome to the National Fireman's Journal. I'm Bobby Halt, and I'm here with my two guests, Ann Gagliano and a guy she found on the street. What was it, Ted? Is that the Ted that, and her husband, Mike? So I had to do that. So Mike and Ann have agreed to visit with us for a little while, and we're going to talk about everything under the sun, from firefighting to family to faith to marriage to just you name it, we're going to go there. So this is the National Fireman's Journal, and we are devoted to the interests of the firefighters across this great nation. That's the original name of fire engineering. It's the original tagline that this great publication had, and so I stole it for this podcast. And the FDIC, the Fire Department's Instructors Conference, a 95-year-old tradition, which was postponed for the first time in history this year due to the Wuhan virus. So tough break there, but we'll be back. We'll figure it out, right? So we'll figure it out. So I'm screwing around with these headsets this year, because this show rather, because a couple of people told me that they like the audio on this better than that Jabra. So I'm messing with it. It's really uncomfortable. I feel like a Madonna stand-in. So, and I can't sing. So listen to me sing. I'll be like Clint Eastwood in Paint Your Wagon. Remember that when he tried to sing? That was sad, right? So I don't want to go down that road. But anyway, thank you for joining with us on the National Fireman's Journal, Mike and Ann. I can't tell you how happy I am that you're here. And so I hate those shows that open up with the bios, and all that stuff. I find that to be, it's depressing, right? So you guys, what is important though is that you guys met right after you got out of the Air Force, right, Mike?
Just before that. Yeah, okay. We met in college.
Okay, so you were still in the Air Force.
We were both in college, and I decided that I didn't want to let her get away from me, so I better get her name on a piece of paper as quick as I could. And so we got married. We had just finished our second year of college, and neither of us were trust fund babies or really had anybody, helping us out at all. So we decided to fund the rest of our education by getting into the Air Force. They had the GI Bill in and all that kind of stuff. And so we thought that would be
they still do
a nice way to do it and start our family and all those types of things. And as Ann describes when she opens up our classes, at the time I was doing computer stuff, programming, that type of stuff in college. And we went into the Air Force, and that was the goal, was to, go get the degree finished, pay for it, not have to, borrow a bunch of money or those types of things. And the Air Force, in its wisdom, I signed up for all the computer courses, and the Air Force looked at that and said, "That's wonderful. We love those choices," and assigned me to the fire department. And at the time, we were like, whoa. And obviously, the way life goes, I think for a lot of people, especially for us, all due respect to everybody, people of faith, boy, God knew exactly what our path should be. And I will always be grateful to the United States Air Force for the start that we got as a family, as a young married couple with nothing really to back us up. And also that was our introduction to the fire service. How do you even put into words how awesome and grateful you are for pulling that lottery ticket?
Well, it's a great line that you just used there, and thanking God for, putting you in the Air Force. But my wife often says that God put you where you were supposed to be, right? Irrespective of the struggle. And if you look at some of the great people of all time, you can compare them to Job, who had everything, and the devil challenged God kind of in a contest to take all his stuff away, and God did, and Job hung tough, and through all of it, and then in the end it all worked out for Job. But and I don't want anybody to go through what that poor guy went through. I mean, ended up with boils all over him and everything else. But I think the lesson there for people, and the ancient wisdom there, is that life is a struggle, right? And no matter where you are, some good can come from it, right? Viktor Frankl in Auschwitz and the other concentration camps, and discovering how to teach people about the meaning of life, and the struggles that we've all had, whether it's with addiction or mental health or physical illness, or or even just poverty and just struggle, right? Some folks just, we all have that friend who he's like, I can't catch a break, but I think it's that way for all of us. If you really look at anyone's life, no matter how happy you think they may be, how wealthy they may be. You know, even Jeff Bezos, I mean, I don't know much about the man really, other than he's probably the wealthiest man in the world. But I'll bet you there's things in his life that are a struggle, and money can't take that away, power can't take it away, fame can't take it away. So I think that's a really important way to start this conversation with both of you, because you've always been interested in my opinion, the struggle, the turmoil that is life, right? And I always joke that I say, you know, anybody who thinks life's about happiness is an idiot, because it's not. You know, it's not about happiness. You're happy from time to time, but it's not about being happy, really. You know, it's about how you deal with the different struggles that come your way every day, every single day. And you both have been champions in, I think, not only your faith, but in your how you carry yourselves in person, and your relationships with others, and with your relationship to one another, that you've allowed the world to see in your talk about marriage, and how you talk about uh, what a struggle that is, right? I always, one of the things I learned from the both of you, and I've shamelessly shared it as if it was my own wisdom, which is what I do with everything I steal. But I learned that from Seneca. Seneca said, you know, if you steal things that are wise, you're a wise man. If you steal things from fools, you're a fool. So, um, so anyway, every now and then a young couple will come to me, or a young firefighter will come up to me and say, well, Chief, I'm thinking about, you know, getting a divorce or leaving my wife. And I'll ask why. I said, well, she makes me crazy. I can't stand her. I'm like, oh, okay. I said, don't ever leave that woman. And we, why? Because if you find somebody who doesn't drive you crazy, then you don't love them. Because the only people that you care about can drive you crazy. If you know what I mean? And my wife, 5 times a day, I think, well, if a meteor just came right now, I'd be happy. And I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? It's because I love her so much, right? And you know, you're so crazy in love with them that, you know, despite the fact that my wife, I think she was born late. She'll be late for her own funeral. And no matter when we schedule it for, if she dies first, I swear to God, I'm going to schedule it for 10 o'clock, and I'm not going to start till 10:30, just so everybody knows it's hers. You know what I mean? But I hate that, because I'm like you. I'm the guy who'll show up 2 hours early. You know, if I've got a flight, I'm 2 hours early. She's the person who shows up 5 minutes before it's supposed to take off and asks if she can cut in front of you in the line at security, right? So, so from you guys, with that background about how you've helped so many, I want to talk today about, you know, not only firefighting and in the fire service world, but what drew you to, and you wrote that beautiful article that started it all. Gosh, that's got to be 12 years ago, 15 years ago.
Like, I think
Long time.
12 or 13 years ago.
Yeah, it was. I was fairly new to this job, and I thought, wow, I wonder how this is going to go over. And I was like,
Yeah.
this ain't firefighting. And Mike said, no, trust me, bro. It was the old trust me, bro. You know, and I'm like, okay, it's one of those Seattle guys, and don't ever Google that. But it's, you know, Mike had three partners, and they wrote a book together called Air Management, which is a classic. But anyway, Mike said, no, trust me, this is great. It was the most widely read article we ever put out there on the internet from fire engineering. I mean, it just, you know, I guess the expression now is it went viral. It was the Wuhan virus of its day for the fire service. And it really kind of ignited a movement, if you will, right? In understanding, and I think it's really important, the commitment that one makes to their spouse, and the sacred bond that you agree to when you make that commitment.
Well said.
And so I'm going to let Ann take us down that road, and then Mike, you can fill in the blanks as to how you got so damn lucky.
Well, you do know one of the things we say in the class, we go through that whole thing about the article coming out. We didn't know how it was going to go, and it was really for the time for a trade periodical, you know, that's about the craft, about, you know, laying lines and throwing ladders and everything else. It's very, you know, risky is not the right word, but it's very different. And we always joke
it was definitely risky.
Yeah. Well, we joke about it that the feedback, the editorial review, the comments, the et cetera, there was more came back from that than anything I had ever written to that point.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that almost caused us to get divorced.
You, you, me, and the advisory board combined never got that kind of a response. So, so okay. Well, both of you then. What was going on in your world at that time that spurned that?
Well, it was actually the year that Mike made captain with Seattle Fire, and he had waited till our boys were almost out of the house to become captain, because in Seattle you can get tagged for a day job, and he didn't want to have to do that daily commute till our boys were mostly grown and gone. So we'd been married a long time before he became captain. And sure enough, he got tagged for the day job. So he was no longer on shift, and he was tagged to be the training captain. So he had to do the daily commute and go down to the training center every single day. And he'd been in Seattle Fire almost, what, 20 years when you made captain?
About that, yeah.
Long time. And we'd been married like 20 some odd years by then. And so now he's at the training center every single day. And every single day he was running into firefighters he hadn't seen since he began at Seattle.
Seattle Fire, big job comparatively, over 1,000 members. You can go your entire career and not meet 20-30% of the department. Not only not know them, not meet them.
Yeah.
If you're out in a firehouse somewhere.
And so every day he's running into firefighters that he hadn't seen since, recruit school even, and catching up with them and reconnecting and reacquainting and asking them, how's your family? And it seemed like almost every single day he was finding out that so-and-so was divorced, and this guy was divorced, and that gal was divorced. And after a while, it really started to get to him and break his heart and say, gosh, I ran into this guy and he's divorced now, and I knew his wife way back when. They were so happy, and every single day another one's divorced. Or they were coming to him and saying, well, you're still married. My marriage is falling apart. Can you help me? And so Mike was coming home to me every day and getting more and more depressed, more and more despair, because he loves these guys. These are great people, but their marriages are falling apart. And then the ones asking for advice, he didn't know what to say. And so he asked me, he said, do you have any ideas on this? Is there something about firefighters that's hard to live with? And I said, oh yeah, absolutely. I've got a lot of ideas on this. And he said, well, just jot a few of them down for me so I'll know what to say next time somebody asks me for advice. And so he was expecting, just a little Post-it note with a line or two. And instead I handed him that article typed. It was 10 pages, annotated document on the things I had observed over 2 decades of living with a firefighter. I wrote it all down, I researched it, and he was really surprised by that. And so that's how it started. It started with trying to figure out how these great people, the greatest people on earth, are having such a high divorce rate and struggling with marriage. And some of the things that we endured over the years, things that I as a spouse endured, and then just how we kind of overcame some of those challenges. And that's where it started. That's how it came about.
There was a lot of blood on those pages, Bobby. A lot of blood.
Yeah, right. So, but let me back you up a little bit, because I was there and went through this with you, at least the article publication deal, and there were some fascinating things that I was made aware of from that piece, and so I want you to kind of think back to some of the things that you wrote about that were things that you found, because what I found was that article, it didn't matter if you were a firefighter. When people read it, I had friends who weren't firefighters at all, that knew me as a friend. And so they would follow my magazine and they would pull up that article from time to time and say, we found this on your firefighting site. Man, and I'm like, and they were dentists, and they were, what I mean? They were like regular, they were accountants and dentists and, folks that worked at Walmart and such. And they were like, no, man, this is me. And I'm like, wow, okay. And they never fought a fire in their lives, never thought about it, have no interest. And not that they don't think the firefighting is a great gig and all that, but they weren't drawn to it or found any interest in it. Okay, so you pull a hose and squirt water on the fire, big deal. That was their impression of firefighting, and God bless them. But that article was different. You take out firefighter and put accountant, and they were good with it. You know what I mean? All that mattered to them was husband and wife, and that dynamic, right? And everything else that gets in between that dynamic. And so, what were some of the things, Anne, in your mind back then that you thought were paramount to talk about in terms of a relationship with someone whose profession routinely puts them in harm's way?
Well, what kind of sprang up from that, again, how we dealt with the different challenges. It's not just one thing; it's many things. But what we were able to kind of narrow it all down to for our class that we developed, and that took a little time, was basically having conversations about these unique challenges, and that's really the answer to any successful marriage. Because I've read a lot of books on marriage, and it all kind of boils down to one thing, is that you have to be able to communicate with each other. No matter what your profession, no matter what's going on, you have to be able to talk about things. That's the number one cause for divorce, is incompatibility stemming from an inability to communicate with each other. So I kind of narrowed it down to conversations. How do we work through these? The one that I think resonates for any marriage in any profession is probably the conversation, what I call on reentry time. And that reentry time is the point of the day when the couple comes back together after being apart for the day. And for any marriage, that can be awkward, but for the firefighter marriage in particular, because we have so much time apart, as much as 48 hours apart, reconnecting with each other can be really awkward. And we found that the beginning of our day back together often went awry or started with a fight because of reentry time. And literally I would, because we were apart for so long, he'd walk in the door and I would just pounce on him and want to talk his ear off, and how to go, what'd you do, blah, 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 this is what happened. And then he's standing there having
Here's the kids.
Yeah, he's been up all night, had fires and whatnot. And that was kind of the first thing that went awry when he became a Seattle firefighter, especially, us not connecting. And then we'd spend the whole time off at odds with each other, trying to reconnect because of reentry time going wrong. So that's where I kind of started the conversation, is how do you come back together as a couple when you live in such opposite worlds, you've been apart for a long time. And so what we learned to do, just for example, I learned to not pounce on him the minute he walked in the door. And it took me a long time, but that's kind of the last thing he wanted, was to just, he used to call it the assault, just pound him with questions and talk. And I learned he's just not up for it. He's been up all night. He's exhausted. So I would give him a break and let him go decompress, shift gears, take a nap, whatever it took. And then later in the day, he would give me what I needed, which was conversation, and really sit down. So that's a conversation. That's one of the things that we teach people, is talk about what will help you with reentry time. What is something you can do to help you shift gears, to help you reconnect, so that you're not mad at each other your whole time off together.
So just real quick before I go to Mike with a question, that's so interesting that you said that, because one of the things in your article that everybody has just told me about was that, and a friend of mine who's a therapist said, she said, well, that's a fundamental difference between men and women, is that women will ask questions about the day, things, how you felt about it, whatever, whereas men will just state facts. Yeah, we had a couple of fires, a couple of rescues. Oh, what kind of fires? Small ones. It's like Dragnet, right? It's Joe Friday and
Yes.
the other fellow. Anyway, which is a fundamental communication difference between men and women that a lot of people never really work out, right? The women are a little more curious by nature, especially about other people. You know, and my wife and I have this problem all the time, still do, even though I'm aware of it. I'll get off the phone with a friend and I said, oh, Kenny is living on a sailboat now in San Diego. It's a true story, that buddy of mine, Kenny. My wife says, why is he doing that? Did he get a divorce? Why is he? I said, I don't know. He's just living on a sailboat. I thought it was pretty cool. It's a 69 footer. It's got 4 bedrooms. You know, I said, his sail has a giant Grateful Dead sign on it too. He's an old deadhead, so it's the giant Grateful Dead sign. Anyway, the skull, the smiling skull thing. And that's all I cared about was the facts. And my wife was like, well, is that his permanent residence or is that his, and I was like, I didn't ask him. I didn't even think of that. I didn't ask him any of that stuff, you know, but which is a fundamental difference. And so I think that's kind of a neat thing, irrespective of your profession, to point out to people that, yeah, and people always want to say there's no difference between the sexes. Yeah, good luck with that. There is, and there's nothing. That's a good thing, right? Androgyny would be horrible. It'd be a horrible species to be part of. That constant tension, right, between the curious and the oblivious is kind of a neat thing, and so that's awesome. So, Mike, when you're first talking to Annie and you said jot a few things down, what were you going through and what did you expect?
Well, she's mellower about it when she talks about it in relation to what was going on at work. I was gutted. I was absolutely devastated. I mean, I think people listening to this, you and I certainly, how much you care about the people you work for. And, I don't think we're these big, perfect, heroic people that they're trying to paint. I think we are flesh and blood people who are trying to do a very significant calling. Most of us, anyway, are fully aware of our gaps in fulfilling that calling. We're aware of them, and I think we work hard on them. But we're aware of just exactly who we are, and we find that the calling so compelling. And it has to be done as a team, and that then brings us to, as a team, you really start to care about the people you work with. And just horrible to have those people come into my offices and their lives are destroyed, their kids are going to different places, the attorneys are involved, there's court cases. And I knew these people, a lot of them anyway, when they're just starting out and they're into marriage 4 or 5 years, and they're good people, they're just like us. And Ann and I were fully aware when we even started talking about it. We're aware of our gaps, and as a matter of fact, you're getting to see those when you read the book and read the articles. You're getting to see that if you're looking for the perfect pair of people with the perfect relationship that have done everything right, there's other books for that besides ours. So when I came to her, it was horrible. It was horrifying, and it caught me off guard. I don't know why, but I was just surprised at how many people were getting split up, why they were getting split up, and who it was, people who I would have expected to be successful. The thing I loved, the thing that she did really well, there's 1,000 topics related to this. And she honed it down to some really practical things that we as a couple did, some through a lot of pain, some by accident, some because we worked really hard at it, that consistently help you to get at the core of the issue and not just dabble around the edges. And all of them, this will be unpopular in our current culture. All of them, in my opinion, when people ask me what's the one thing that everything else boils down to is you cannot be a selfless SOB or a selfish SOB and expect your marriage to go well. You cannot. And our culture's telling us, look out for yourself, get your own thing. What is there for you? And we wonder why relationships they don't even have a chance. They don't even start out having a chance now because everything's about what are they doing for you? If we've done one thing right consistently as young kids trying to forge a relationship together, we've always come back to, I need to do for her. I need to look out for her. I need to sacrifice for her. And she has always done the same. And in that intersection of looking out for somebody else, your needs get met better than they ever would by always looking out for yourself. And almost everything she wrote about, believe me, if you've read some of the critique of the article, if you've read some of the blowback that we get, almost 100% of the blowback, it's not the facts of the article, it's not the way it's written or the book, it's not that we were being mean or whatever. It always comes back to 3 simple words. What about me? Wait a minute. You talked about giving your firefighter some space at the door. What about me? What about me? What about me? And the firefighters, yeah, she doesn't understand the stuff I go through. And she needs to understand. And it's that constant tension. The stuff that she wrote, I think, so poignantly is it is about you, but the more important thing is it's more important, what about us? And what do I bring that makes us stronger? And I think that's where we overcome a lot of our gaps and a lot of our failings.
Wow. Danny Trejo, the guy who plays Machete in that movie Machete,
Yeah.
the grizzly kind of actor dude.
Machete don't text.
I love that guy. Yeah, what was that? I'm sorry?
Machete don't text.
Machete don't
That's
text.
his line. Yeah.
That's his line, exactly. So Machete, he owns a couple of taco places, but there was an accident in front of one of his taco places in California. He's like 75 years old now. And so he went out and he helped rescue a young lady and her daughter. And so people asked him later, why at your age and with your wealth and fame would you risk doing that? And he said, the best things that ever happened to me in life happened when I was doing something for someone else.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what you were just talking about there. So Anne, um, that Mike kind of talked about that, and you kind of talked about meeting people. My wife always used to tell me the first thing when I come home from the shift is, "You're not the chief here." That was the first line, and "You're not the chief here," which was always hard for me. I wear my little Chiefs cap, and just kidding. So this is a really tough question, and I want to phrase this correctly, and I don't mean to hurt anybody. And I'm blessed. I've been with Marcia now since 1973, and it's 47 years. And so really lucky that she's tolerated me and all my imperfections.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no. Oh, God, trust me. I'm the luckiest man alive. But so one of the things that I've learned for folks that have gone through these terrible events is the devastating effect that betrayal has on somebody when someone's betrayed. And marriage is probably like the ultimate betrayal, because you've promised to share your entire life, everything you own, your future with that person. And it's always interesting to me when it happens to someone, when they feel like they've been betrayed, and to watch that terrible, terrible, terrible psychological damage that it does to those people, irrespective of what their past behavior was like, which I always find fascinating, because I knew fellas that had a Velcro quick release band. The minute they left town, they were suddenly separated because their wife wasn't standing next to them. But the minute they found out their wife or their husband did something, they were blown away, right? So how, and I think it's survivable. I mean, I know a lot of great couples that have got past it, right? And a lot who didn't. And I'm not judging either one. But what do you say to someone, a firefighter contacts you, Ann, and says, "Hey, I came home from work and my husband came up to me and he said, I've met someone else, or I've been messing around on you," or the wife says it. What do you say to them? And I know you're not a professional marriage counselor, but
I know.
I know people ask you that, and that's a big deal. And you were willing to put yourself out there.
Boy, betrayal it's a whole nother level of shattered trust, and once trust is gone, it's pretty tough. For that type of betrayal, you pretty much have to, I would, in my opinion, if you're going to have any kind of a shot at restoring your marriage, you are going to need counseling, one-on-one therapy, and be willing to do that. That's pretty severe. That's pretty much beyond my pay grade as far as betrayal. For a marriage to work again, counseling at that point. But there are different kinds of betrayal. That's probably the most difficult one to overcome. But there are all kinds of different betrayals. There's financial infidelity, secret spending. There's gambling addictions. most betrayal stems from some type of addiction in one
Well,
form or
now wait a second. I have asked Mike to do me a favor, because if I die first, please don't let my wife sell my guns for what I told her I paid for them.
yeah,
Please.
yeah,
Or my car.
Or the Mustang.
Or the
yes.
Mustang. Yeah. No, please. I'm just kidding. But you mean like secret bank accounts and
Secret spending or anything that shatters trust, anything done in secret, a secret life, a secret addiction, those kinds of things can really come between a couple and shatter that trust. And to really truly be intimate and be best friends, you have to really trust each other. And so that's, again, I bringing it back to firefighters. There does tend to be a little bit more trouble with addiction in high stress professions, whatever your addiction. No judgments here. Just know that high stress can tend to lead towards addictions that will impact your marriage or maybe make you do something you normally wouldn't do. And so we talk about that a little bit, is how do you handle some of the high stress, trauma, danger, the things that make this job very different than other jobs and make you vulnerable to things, like I said, like addictions. And that's one of the conversations that we talk about in our class, and helping each other. We're kind of more in line of helping you before you get to the divorce side of it. So trying to work more on the prevention. But if you're wanting the answer to betrayal, to maybe even marriage not working out, I also included a chapter in our book about, and it's really important to say this, I'm going to get a little dark here. Divorce is the number one catalyst for suicide. The World Health Organization declared divorce the number one catalyst for suicide, and particularly for men, 4 times more likely to commit suicide from divorce than women, because they have more trouble reconnecting emotionally with anyone else. Women tend to keep the kids, and they tend to emotionally connect more easily than men do. So it's a bit of a health crisis. And so that's why I put in my book specifically, if you've tried everything and it still doesn't work out, divorce is not the end. And don't ever think that it's the end. You can learn from your mistakes, and you can start over and try again. And lots of times people get it right the second time. And so that's why I like to say that, because it is a serious issue. That betrayal can take you to some pretty despairing places. So again, we try to target the front end before you get to the divorce, but also remind people at the same time, it isn't the end. Life can go on, and you can find love again. My parents went through a nasty divorce, and oftentimes men feel like if I'm not there for the kids, they don't need me anymore. If I'm not in the house anymore. And I like to tell people, my dad actually doubled his efforts as a parent after my parents' divorce, and actually became a better father. And he stayed nearby. He made every effort, and the kids need you. Even if you're not in the house, they still need you. So I like to say that too, because it's a prime target for suicide. And that's one of the reasons too that we're so serious about this, because we really care about firefighters and the health of their home life, because it can be so dangerous for suicide.
Couple practical things. He talked about being on the front end of it, and it'd be better to start there than go to the other side of it. Every time I talk about this, people look at me like I'm a weirdo, and that's just fine. It ain't like I'm not used to that look. I put mechanisms in place, and I would encourage you as married couples to put guardrails and mechanisms in place. One of the articles that Ann wrote online for fire engineering that got the most feedback was an article entitled "Don't Be Surprised If We Get Divorced." And people were like, "What are you talking about? You're the marriage experts." It's like, listen, we're you. We're two fallen, fallible people trying to navigate a relationship together with the exact same failings you have, all the same pressures. We're you. And if we stop doing the things that we're writing about that helped us be successful, we are just as susceptible to everything else that everybody else is susceptible to, including violating the marital bed, violating that trust. And our culture is laughing at affairs right now. There's whole websites right now that are they're dedicated to you having the affair of your life, and there's people getting snared up into ministers and people like that. Our culture laughs at it and mocks at it like it's no big deal. Oh, it's just a thing. Everybody does that. Baloney. Part of the reason why it's tough to talk about what you do for people who have betrayed, have had that type of betrayal, is it comes in so many different flavors. I know I'm susceptible to it, and know she's susceptible to it. We are both in our own worlds. I'm gone a lot of the time. She's home. We're in hotel rooms and all this other stuff. Believe me, plenty of opportunity to go down that road if we wanted to. I put guardrails in place. One of the guardrails that I put in place that people seem to snicker at, I'm telling you, it works for me, is look at this beautiful girl. I envision from time to time, I do it not every day, not every week, maybe not even every month, but I purposefully envision in my mind what she would look like when she hears the news, what that face that I love so much would look like when she hears the news that I have slept with somebody else, that I have violated the oath, that on our knees before God, we committed to each other. And I know what that would look like. I know what that brokenness, that betrayal, the tears, I know what it would look like. And I think about what that would look like. And it may sound odd, but it's one of those things that is put into place that if that train starts to go in that direction, and I'm feeling down, I'm tired, I've been on the road, maybe we got in a fight before I left to go teach, whatever it is, and for some reason that circumstance pops up where that opportunity is there to destroy everything we've created over these years, one of the things that pops into my mind immediately, because I've disciplined myself to do it, is what will her face look like when she hears that I've betrayed our lifelong covenant? And I'll tell you, you want to talk about a, what do they call those, aphrodisiac? That ain't it. That's an anti-aphrodisiac. The other thing I do, and again, I get a lot of scorn from people on this. I don't put myself in those positions, Bob. I'm not in my hotel room alone with other women. Even my friends that I know have zero interest in me, I don't put myself in those positions. I make sure that there is a wall and a line, and that way the failings that I have, that I know I have, that I'm susceptible to, like everybody else who's fallen, there is an opportunity. When we talk to other people about betrayal, and that you're right, that does happen. We feel like it is something that once you get to that point, you do need somebody with a little bit more training than what we have to help you navigate it. But the one thing that is non-negotiable is you do have to get other people involved in the process. If you just try to navigate it yourself, if you think the betrayal is small, you've been lied to by the culture that says it's okay to do what you want. It's not. It's a devastating betrayal, and it's why we try so hard to get you not to make that mistake, because it's a crucial one. It is very difficult, and we have plenty of couples who have gotten through it. And the biggest thing they had to get through was, you told me that I could trust you, and now I know I can't. Whatever else you say, whatever else you do, always in the back of my mind, I know I can't trust you. And to navigate that breach, it's going to be very important to bring other people into the mix, not only to give you counsel, but you're going to need accountability as you go forward, people to help you with the accountability. And it's really crucial. And the last thing I would say, because that's kind of that's a dark take. I'm sorry. Just that's
it's good.
That's what we believe is the truth.
But I think it's so important what you said there about getting professional counseling, because I think that the reason I wanted to bring that one up is that when that happens in our system, and you have a teammate who's going through that, a crew member, a person in your division, even if it's a big department, you got to be hands-on with that person for a while, because as Ann said, they're so fragile at that point. They're so fragile, and their exterior bravado, or may hide a lot of that, because we're very good at hiding our emotions, our feelings, our inner demons, because that's who we are. I mean, we're supermen, we're superwomen, we're bulletproof, and we kind of have to play that role for our own, I don't know, balance or whatever. But occasionally playing that role has a really steep price, and especially in relationships. So I'm gonna change it up a little bit here, because this is another, and a couple of burning questions I had for you guys, and this is my other one, because I think there's two different views on this, and I'm in one camp and other people are in another camp, and I think it's all about worldview and the couple themselves, is the whole sharing thing, right? And we went down the road a little bit with the, my wife likes to ask a lot of questions. I'm not a big questioner. So in my career, and I've been with Marsh since '73, and much like you guys, have had kind of some crazy side jobs and crazy life before this, and and a crazy career. And I was never big on sharing. Like a lot of my friends would tell their wives, like, every run they had, and every, you know, everything they did, and I'd be like, yeah, it was busy, and always busy. I mean, I never had, even the nights I slept, I didn't sleep. I lied through my teeth. I never gave it up that I didn't get clobbered every night, because I didn't want her to tell me to go clean the gutters or anything. So I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? So I never was in that camp. I tried not to bring the job home. You know what I mean? And then I have friends who are completely the opposite. They knew everything about every dispute that they had with whatever firefighter. They knew everything about every run we ever went on, and that worked for them. And so when you guys are in the system, what do you see to be the more prevalent? The people who are big sharers, do they fare better, or is that more the norm, or is it the silo people like me? I've been accused of being a silo person, but and it works for us. You know what I mean? What I do is what I do. You know what I mean? And when I'm home, I'm home. I try to be home. You know what I mean? So, what do you think, Annie?
Well, that's again why we designed it to be, these are conversations that you need to have, because every couple is as unique as the members that comprise that couple. There are no two people that are exactly alike. There are no two couples that are exactly alike. So we can't be a one size fits all kind of thing. It's just have the conversation, what works for you. And some of the unique challenges of firefighting is you have to talk about certain things. And one of those is, and a firefighter put it this way, and I thought it was a really concise way to put it. What makes us really good at our job at firefighting, really good at the firehouse, often makes us really bad at home. And that seems to be true. And that's been from my experience. What makes you really good at handling danger, trauma, and all the things that you have to handle makes you bad at home. And like you said, some of that's keeping your emotions to yourself, keeping all your stuff to yourself. You can't be at a trauma scene and sitting there crying or carrying on or being all emotional. You have to write it out. You have to be tough. You have to be able to control your emotions. All of those things work at the firehouse, but I'm telling you from experience, it doesn't work so much at home.
So it's
And
kind of
so,
inappropriate to assign your wife to the kitchen group.
yeah, or barking orders, or using that, like you said, the chief's voice. I call it, don't use your firefighter voice on me, or I'm not a firefighter, I'm not your subordinate. Don't use that voice on me. Those are some of the conversations, the harshness,
In the
emotions.
military, they say take the base out,
Yeah.
because generally
Yeah,
speaking, when men want to project a directive, will put the base in. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
want you. You know.
yes.
So yeah, that the line that you'll hear routinely in the military is, "Hey son, when you're talking to me, you take the base out."
Exact, take the firehouse out. That
Yeah.
would be kind of the firefighter marriage. And so that's based on some of those things. We have a conversation. What in our marriage, what has been like a key phrase? Develop your own key phrases of warnings. Like I said, reminding you when I say, "Hey, I'm not a firefighter," that means you're starting to irritate me, and we're heading towards warning.
Will
You're keeping
Robinson,
that voice. So that means back off, buddy.
the
um,
robot with the little hands going.
or what we've learned to do too. One of the things is the fix it mentality. That's part of the firehouse. Fix it. When I
Oh yeah.
bring you a problem, don't go into firefighter fix it mode and slap some duct tape on it and get all harsh and quick and emergency, and that doesn't work. So that's one of the other conversations. What I'm needing for you, what that means is I need you to just sit down and listen. I'm just wanting to vent. I need to talk. That's most women typically get an emotional release of chemicals, or a release of chemicals when we talk about our emotions, that makes us high, that makes us feel better. They're finding men don't have that same type of release of chemicals. It's something to do with how our brains are wired. So he's learned over the years to just let me vent, let me talk about my emotions. Don't try to fix it. Don't go into firefighter mode. Those are some of the things that have helped our marriage, and treat me very differently than you would a fellow firefighter. Let me talk about my emotions. And I've learned he doesn't need to talk about his emotions. He typically doesn't want to. So let that be okay that he doesn't want to talk about that. I just need him to be present when we are having any kind of conversation. He doesn't have to talk about his feelings, but talk to me about something. Those are just some of the things that we've learned to do. Is he's learned to let me be who I am, and I've learned to let him be who he is. And one of the things that has helped me to cope with the firehouse and the different type of profession that it is that he's let me be involved, and he's welcomed me to the firehouse. I've been allowed to be there, welcomed there. A lot of firefighters don't want their families at the firehouse, and so then it becomes this secret life, and then you wonder why you're not connecting. So the more he's let me be involved, the more I understand what's going on, and can be patient with him and be involved. Another thing I found, spouses are so afraid of knowing what they do because it scares them. It is dangerous. It is life threatening, that they choose not to be involved. And then they don't understand what's going on. So I've always chosen, even though it's been hard for me at times, to see what he's doing, to know what he's doing, so that I can help him cope with it too, and not be an ostrich and be checked out. And I don't care what you do because it scares me, those kinds of things. So those are some of the conversations that we teach couples to have. Be involved, take each other's side, know the unique challenges of firefighting, and don't be an ostrich with your firefighter.
I like that. Okay, so we'll kind of tie it up in a nice little knot here at the end, and so and it's been a long time since I dated. So, and matter of fact, I dated for a grand total of about 2 months. I went to an all boys Catholic high school, went to France for a while. I met Marcia at my first, I don't know, couple of weeks in college. Was love at first sight, and that was it. So yeah, got lucky. Got lucky early. So what advice do you give to folks, young firefighters, guys and gals that are maybe a couple of years on the job, and they're getting ready to either start a family or they've got a young family? We said, share what you need to share, include them in the firehouse. I get all that. What would be like the one or two things that you think are most important to having a successful relationship with someone, um, in given everything that, as Mike said today, with the incredibly secular, self-centered, narcissistic, crazy society we're living in? What advice would you give to them, and how would you present it in a way that doesn't sound preachy, or you know what I mean? Or because there's the old expression, only idiots give advice and only fools take it. But there's also ancient wisdom, right? And a lot of what you both talk about is just ancient wisdom that was passed down
It
from
is.
folks that had good relationships for thousands of years.
Yep.
And so what would be the one or two things you would say to a young couple, like, hey, no matter what happens, always remember this, or always do this? And the one thing that I took away, someone told me years ago, I think it was my mom, was never go to bed angry. No matter what you have to do, doesn't mean you can't go to bed mad,
Yeah.
but make sure you kiss and make up, and you can still be not happy about it. But don't ever go to bed. Don't ever leave the house angry. Don't ever be, don't ever walk away from one another angry. You know what I mean? with some kind of finality, like going to work or, going to bed. Always, doesn't mean you can't separate sometimes because you got to just give this a little air, you know what I mean? Especially oftentimes it's got something to do with the kids, you know what I mean? And you're here and, it's Mars and Venus, or it's North and South. And, sometimes you just need to let that go for a little while and the poles kind of drift together. But other than that, and I always thought that was great advice, and I've always followed it, what would you guys add to that? What are some of the things that have worked for you and that you've seen work for others? Just a couple of quick tips for people to take away.
Well, it's actually the main message that we like to end our class with, actually, and again, bringing it back to the fire service and this unique, wonderful, amazing profession that makes it different than other professions, is that you have the blessing of two families. Firefighting is a family, and because of the unique nature of the job, put your lives in each other's hands. You eat together, as John Mittendorf says, you eat together, sleep together, sometimes die together. It becomes like family when you share those types of traditions and you know each other's peculiarities and sleeping habits, and just like a family, and break bread together and pray, pranks on each other. And the nature of the job, it's very compelling, and it's exciting. It's oftentimes a lot more exciting than what's going on at home by comparison. Firefighters are all kind of alike, have very similar personalities, and so they're drawn to each other off shift often as well, to hang out, to hunt, fish, do sports. All of these things are a blessing, but the problem with a firefighter marriage sometimes is the scale can start to tip, and the second family starts to feel like the first family and starts to replace the first family. And so that's something that we noticed over the years, that not only the compelling nature of the job, but the compelling nature of a firefighter, type A, achievement oriented, like to do exciting, compelling projects. And I found that over the years, Mike was gone a lot or distracted a lot. And at some points, I have started to feel second, like our family was becoming second to this amazing career, to these amazing people. And then jealousy inevitably would start to creep in. And whatever it is that's taking you away from your first love is going to be a bone of contention. And so what we like to tell young couples and warn them is just always remember to keep your first family first. And whatever it takes, make sure that your first love knows that they are your first love and that they haven't been replaced by a second love, because then a once supportive spouse can now start to hate the fire service, and it can come between you. And so what does that mean? What does that look like? How do you do that? Every couple's different. For us, it means time management, that he needs to spend a little more time with me. He needs to say no to that extra project, to that exciting, compelling achievement that he wants, or run it by me before he says yes. At least give me a little buy-in on this. But that's probably the best tip I can give to our achievement-oriented firefighters, is to remember to keep your first family first, your first love first, or she or he is going to get very jealous. And even God himself said he's a jealous God. He wants to be first. He wants to be, and as long as I know I'm first, then I won't be jealous. Now I'll be supportive and on board, and I'm cheering him on and become his biggest fan instead of his worst enemy, because I'm jealous. So, and he's been really good about taking stock with me every now and then. We're starting to drift apart. So what needs to go so that you feel first and feel know that you are number one in my heart, and then we can proceed together. But that looks like typically time management. Something's got to go. We're too busy here.
Well, as long as it doesn't have anything to do with writing for fire engineering, you can cut it out.
Yeah, that article that's due next week is going to be 2 weeks late. Sorry, dude. First family.
Oh no, you got till August. Remember, we pushed it back.
Yeah.
So, Mike, anything that you want to add before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I don't mean it. I hope it doesn't sound like a broken record. For any couple that's trying to be together, I guess the first thing I would resolve, number one, don't rush it. There's no hurry. I think you want to find out about each other. You want to know who the individual is. You're talking about, in our view, a lifetime commitment. So you want to know who they are. Kind of figure out what you really want to be true. And, I thought I knew what that was culturally for most people, what they wanted to be true about their relationship. Increasingly, when I hear people talk, I don't recognize some of what people want out of a relationship. Less and less, I'm recognizing it less and less. I'll tell you what we wanted, and that's what has guided what we've done. We wanted before God, and that's a sacred commitment to us. For you, you guys will have to figure out, what your ruling authority is, or what you appeal to for your character and what you believe. On our knees before God as two young kids, without a pot to piss in. We had nothing. But what we did have is we made a commitment on our knees before God to love each other with our lives, to sacrifice for each other, to commit for each other. And that simple commitment is now, all these 30 plus years later, and now we're older and much more battle scarred. That still remains day to day, the very commitment that we have, and it trumps everything. The only thing that gets in the way of that is our individual commitment to God. But beyond that, the fire service doesn't get to take it out. Our other family concerns don't get to take it out. Our financial concerns don't get to take it out. Our kids don't get to take it out. That commitment to each other, to love each other, to sacrifice for each other, has given us more reward, more benefit. Hard for me to even find words to say it, and it's worth it. It's worth making that commitment, but you have to decide what it is that you want. And if you go back and listen to this, every single thing that Ann said, and I hope everything that I said, but I'm listening to her, everything she said, try to find out, try to get on each other's side, try to find out how each other communicates, try to give each other the benefit of the doubt. If you hear underneath every bit of that, it goes back to, don't be selfish. Look to the other person's needs first. It doesn't matter that you don't want to say some of the details of things. She needs to hear some of the details. Work on that. From her perspective, it doesn't matter that you want to know every atom of every molecule of everything that happened. Figure out what's enough for the person on the other side of the equation that doesn't want to share details. And in that intersection of trying to meet each other's needs, I think that's where you form an awesome relationship. I mean, one thing we do Bobby, every time we talk, reentry time's a big one. That crash at the door, make sure coming from the rock and roll world of the firehouse, when you come back into home, that you do something to make that transition. The exact same thing is true for the spouse. When they come back from their jobs, working at the bank or, teaching your crazy kids, in elementary school and trying to navigate all of that, they also deserve that reentry time. Your spouse that's home with the kids all day and hasn't had any adult interaction, they deserve some of that reentry time. Everything's reciprocal in a relationship where the people are focusing on each other. And if you do that, here's the cool thing. People come to our classes expecting us to rag the fire service and say what a terrible thing it is and how it destroys relationships. And man, we are grateful for the fire service, and we firmly believe and are trying to model it. You can have a wonderful career in the fire service, commit to it the way it should be committed to, and never lose the thing that you're going to go through the rest of your life with. What I don't think most firefighters realize, you probably know it, most folks do now that are at our age. Bobby, whatever else is true, I can stand before God and say, I gave Seattle Fire my heart and soul. I gave it. I really did. It was an imperfect ride, and I didn't do everything right. But I'm telling you what, for the men and women that I worked with, the citizens, I gave it everything I had and committed. And I left some skin there, brother. I took some pain. I have some scars for standing up for my troops. Do you know how long, after 33 years in the fire service, over 28 in Seattle Fire, do you know how long it took Seattle Fire to move on from me? On the last day that I worked, I was already kicked out of the fire department email system, and I couldn't even log on to my own rig. My guys had to log me on the last day I worked. That's how fast you move out of the system. It's next person up, and thank you for your service, but there's going to be fires tomorrow, and we got to run to those. However invaluable you think you are, And I was fortunate. I got to talk with people like yourself and Chief Brunacini and John Mittendorf and people who did significantly more for the fire service than I ever did. And when that coat went on the hook, from that moment forward, the department started to move on from them. What a tragedy. All of you who are listening to this who love the fire service, what a tragedy on that day, like I did when I hung my coat on the hook and that was it. What a tragedy as Seattle Fire says, thank you for your service. We're moving on, to go home to an empty house, go home to a destroyed relationship, a destroyed marriage, because we allowed something that is wonderful, the fire service, to trump something that's even better, the relationship that we have.
Well, I'll tell you, I can't thank you both enough for spending the hour with us. This was amazing, as it always is, because I love you both, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate both of you. But that analogy of the reentry, you know, you think of the rocket, and we've all grew up with the rockets and the fire coming around the capsule, and then they pop the parachute, and it makes for that gentle slope back into the calm water, and it's just such a great analogy. There's the reentry, there's the friction. Wait a second, pop the parachute, slow it down, hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on. Everything's going to be okay. Let's hit the water. You know, if you're Russian, let's hit the ground, which I never understood. But I guess it beats the hell out of drowning. But the, the, I love that analogy, right? You know, because you're coming, you're re-entering, and when you do, when you hit the atmosphere that sustains your life and really keeps us alive, because the other atmosphere you're coming out of is not sustainable. Like Mike just said, it will end, but this will never end. This bond, this bond. So I can't thank you enough for that analogy. It's beautiful. I'll always have that because of you guys and many, many other things, but that's a really pretty one for today. So thank you, Ann and Mike, for being on the National Fireman's Journal. I really appreciate it. If you want to subscribe, you can hit that little subscribe button. We try to get one of these or so out a week with folks like Mike and Ann, and we'll be talking with Ray McCormick next week, and we got a couple other folks lined up, Dan Majikowski, folks like that. So hope you come visit with us again on the National Fireman's Journal. We are devoted to the interests of firefighters across this great nation. So if there's something you want to hear about, or somebody you'd like us to talk to, or if you'd like to talk to us, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. Mike, Annie, I love you. We'll see you down the road, my friends.
God bless you, brother.
Love you.
Love you more.